So what's up, everybody? It's Pre-owned Joni. This weekend, I'm going to be in Portland for the final spin-off brought to you by Pioneer DJ at Hot Import Nights. But before I leave, I wanted to get you guys this video. I've been doing a lot of fun videos, but I wanted to give you guys something useful again. So today we're going to look at if a MacBook Air is powerful enough to run your DJ software. So in 2011, I started using Serato Scratch Live using a MacBook Pro, and it was a late 2011 MacBook Pro, the last one with USB 2.0, and one of the earlier models with Thunderbolt. And I used it for a couple years, and along with it, I used a Thunderbolt Lacy hard drive. I never had a problem running Serato Scratch Live on it. Used it for 2 years in both HID mode and DVS, and it worked great. However, because it was my computer that I did everything on, I was doing a lot of video rendering, and one of the problems I came across was overheating, and it overheated the logic board. It overheated the logic board 3 times that by the 3rd replacement, Apple decided to just give me money to buy a new MacBook Pro. And that's when I got the MacBook Pro with Retina display. This is a late 2013 model. It's the 15-inch, and I got it in 2014. And from 2014 to 2018, this has been running Serato and many other things flawlessly without a problem. Well, minor problems, but not related to running the DJ software. Never had a glitch, had one crash. Now, one of the things I came across was this is a $2,200 machine, and that's not including the AppleCare that I got with it. Sometimes when I take it to gigs, the environment isn't really the best. One of the places not safest for your gear is when you're at a college club and the VIP's upstairs and people are trying to make it rain with their drinks, and droplets of alcohol, water, and drinks get all over your equipment. It's pretty scary when you have a $2,200 laptop. So what I did was an opportunity came around where a friend of mine sold his MacBook Air, which was only a month old, and he sold it to me for $600. Practically brand new, he barely used it. And I loaded Serato DJ on it and started using it at my gigs. And after I installed the software and tried it out, it was apparent that a MacBook Air actually is powerful enough to use as a computer for your DJ software. So to answer the question in the title, yes, a MacBook Air is powerful enough to run your DJ software. End of video. Just kidding. So what we're going to talk about in this video is how would you determine which MacBook Air models are actually good enough to run your DJ software. And if you actually date back, the MacBook Air started in 2009. And I can tell you right now, those earlier models, I would not recommend using modern DJ software on. So today, what I'm trying to help you guys figure out is how do you determine which MacBook Air can you use with your DJ software? So before I continue, there are 3 rules I want you guys to keep in mind. Number 1, never update your operating system until the developer of the DJ software that you are using specifically releases a compatible version. Usually they blast out an email saying, don't update yet to OS X Mojave until we come out with a version. Serato does that. Pioneer does that for REKORDBOX. I'm not subscribed to Native Instruments, but I'm pretty sure they have a similar system. Number 2, always back up your laptop. Whether you're cloning or using Time Machine, just in case you need to move it back. What I always hear is after somebody updated their laptop, yo PJ, how do I bring it back to the earlier operating system? Well, did you use Time Machine? What's Time Machine? So I personally recommend using Time Machine. It's the Apple way to back up your laptop. All you need is an external hard drive with at least the same capacity as the hard drive you have inside. In a MacBook Air, that's not very big. You could even use a flash drive. So always back up your laptop. Number 3, always follow the Mac optimization guide for macOS or OS X from the Serato website. And I say this specifically even if you're using REKORDBOX, Traktor, Virtual DJ, because there's certain things in that specific guide that are very important. I'm going to do a whole talk on this on a totally different video, but specifically, when I upgraded from Yosemite to El Capitan, I had an issue where I would leave the laptop for about 2 minutes, and then I'd come back, and then all of a sudden my latency is like 2 seconds, and I couldn't understand why. Didn't fiddle with anything, didn't open any other programs. And it wasn't just because when I left it, sometimes when I minimize it, or if I open another program, just a browser, just to look at something, I come back to Serato and the latency's way out of whack. I found out after following this optimization guide that what was causing that was actually AppNav. And honestly, I see this problem on a lot of Serato Facebook groups and forums where they're like, oh, my Mac doesn't work. Something's weird. I updated my OS X and it's acting weird. 9 out of 10 times it was solved by disabling AppNav. And that's actually covered on that list. We'll talk about that list in another video. So first, let's talk about the requirements for the most popular DJ software, which is Serato DJ Pro. According to their website, their minimum requirements are as follows. So for the operating system requirements, it works with the newest Mac operating system, which is Mojave 10.14. And it also works with High Sierra 10.13, Sierra 10.12, and I believe El Capitan 10.11. It has to be 64-bit only because Serato DJ Pro, which is version 2.0 and on, is 64-bit. That's not a problem for Macs because Macs are all 64-bit. For the processor, whether you're using an i3, an i5, or an i7, it has to have a speed of at least 1.07 gigahertz. And from what I learned, I did some research on this, and shout out to everybody who helped me out and responded to me on the Serato site, DJ forums, and the Facebook groups. Whether you are using a single core, dual core, or quad core, it has to have a base speed of 1.07 gigahertz, no matter what. Because the way Serato works, when it's playing, it only uses one core. And it's only when you're analyzing when it uses multiple cores, and you can actually set it in the settings. So screen resolution has to be a minimum of 1280 by 720. All MacBooks exceed that. Minimum memory should be 4 gigs of RAM. It has to have an available USB 2.0 port. Most computers have at least a USB 2.0. I don't even think they make it with 2.0. They make it with 3.0, which is cross-compatible. And if you have USB Type-C, like on the newest MacBook and the MacBook Pro Retina with the touch bar, you have to get one of the dongles to convert it. Now for free hard drive space, 5 gigabytes. You should have plenty in your MacBook Air. And these requirements are basically for not using any plugins at all, like Pitch in Time. Now I've used Pitch in Time and I had a bitch in time. Just kidding. But Pitch in Time, which is the improved algorithm for time stretching, it actually is very resource heavy. And if you wanted to use it according to the minimum requirements, make sure you're using an i5 or an i7. Don't use the i3. And even if you follow the minimum requirements, it doesn't mean you can use the fastest latency settings. So basically, the more powerful your computer are in all these specs, the better it's going to perform. And the better it performs, the faster you can set it. Now that you saw the minimum requirements, I'm going to talk about what I actually recommend. So here's my recommended system requirements for Serato. Same operating systems. Just use the i5 and the i7 with the same speeds or more. Memory, for me, minimum, I say go 8. Free hard drive space, 5 gigabytes. Now the hard drive type has to be a solid state drive or a hybrid drive. Now I'm speaking if you're talking about an older MacBook Pro or an older MacBook, but all MacBook Airs come with a solid state. And the hard drive can be a big bottleneck as to how fast your system runs, and having a solid state in there is way better. In fact, it's better to have a smaller solid state and use an external, preferably Thunderbolt, than it is to try to get the biggest solid state hard drive in there as you can and cram as much music as you can. It's way more cost effective to go this route. And because of the Thunderbolt connection, there's very negligible performance difference between using an external or playing from an internal drive. And of course, make sure to follow Serato's Mac optimization guide for Mac OS and OS X. If you ever want to see the specs on your MacBook Pro, all you have to do is go to the Apple in the corner, top left corner, go to About This Mac, and the overview should be selected if it's not already, but you go to overview, and right here it will tell you all your specs. So I'll just read mine out since you probably can't read that. So for my MacBook Pro, the model is a late 2013. It's a 15-inch with the Retina display. Currently, I'm running High Sierra 10.13.4. I have not upgraded to Mojave because not all the DJ software that I use is compatible yet. So the processor speed on this is the 2.3 gigahertz Intel Core. It's a quad core. And the price of this model is actually $2,200. The memory that came with it is 16 gigs, and the hard drive capacity on it was 512 gigs. That is more than enough to run Serato. Hard drive type, it's a solid state, check. I followed Serato's Mac optimization guide, of course. I use an external Thunderbolt drive for my music library, and the reason for this is that if I have to service my computer, I can just take this hard drive and use it with another machine. This computer, for many years, I used it with everything. A lot of people say, use your computer only for Serato. So this has been my everything computer. I use it for everything. I use it for video editing. I use it for, I run Ableton on it. My music production, it's the center of my studio, even today. My photoshopping, it's done here. All my documents. This was my only computer for a very, very long time, and I did everything with it. And the latency setting I use on it is 5 milliseconds. It works fine in 2 milliseconds. So in essence, my late 2013 MacBook Pro is actually overkill to be used with Serato, but it was my one computer that I could do everything on. So let's check out the specs on my MacBook Air. It is a 13-inch 2017 model. The price is about $1,000. The operating system I have on it right now is High Sierra 10.13.5. The processor speed is 1.8 gigahertz. It's an Intel Core i5. It just exceeds the minimum requirements from Serato and my recommended. The memory on it, the RAM on it is 8 gigabytes, meets my recommended. The free hard drive space, well, the capacity of the hard drive is 128 gigabytes. I usually have 64. More than enough. More than plenty to run Serato because it's a MacBook Air. It does have a solid state drive. Of course, I followed Serato's Mac optimization guide for macOS and OS X. Since it has a really small drive, I use an external drive. I used this Lacy Thunderbolt drive so that I can easily flip between both machines instead of copying the library over from one to the other. Not to mention, it won't fit in the Air. Now, this computer, at first I was like, okay, I'm just going to use it for Serato, but I have found that it runs fine, even though I have other software installed in there. The reason why I decided to install some software in there is because sometimes if I travel without my MacBook Pro and I need to do an edit, or if I need to do a design, just a quick edit, I have a couple things in there just in case I need my tools. It's like kind of like having a Swiss Army knife versus an entire tool set. So on paper, a MacBook Air actually meets the requirements. So how has it worked in practice? I have been able to use it at 5 milliseconds and I never had a crash. I've used it for months. I made a video where I connected 2 of my controllers to control 4 decks, 4 different music sources, and played them all together, and the MacBook Air delivered flawlessly. Also, I commonly play my guitar when I spin. So sometimes I have this program called Boss Tone Studio that controls my multi-effects, and I have that running in the background of Serato DJ Pro. And I haven't had an issue using my MacBook Air along with Tone Studio. And I've done gigs, multiple gigs, that lasted for 4 to 5 hours. No issue. And I think a lot of it is because of the Mac optimization guide from Serato. So my MacBook Air definitely works. Not only works, it works well. And it's less than half the price of my MacBook Pro. So you saw how I looked at the specs and compared them. And what I saw from everymac.com's website, that all the MacBook Airs from 2015 on, I believe, on paper will work with Serato DJ Pro. Now, these requirements that I listed to you is what you have to take a look at if you're considering to use an older MacBook Air. You have to go to the Apple About This Mac and the overview, look at your specs and compare them and see if it works. I wouldn't recommend using anything with less than 4 gigs of RAM, and I wouldn't recommend using anything that is a Core 2 Duo. It might work, but one of the things to keep in mind, Serato DJ Pro is a bigger program now. It's a 64-bit platform now, in fact. And it requires more resource, and computers have become more powerful, so they've been keeping up and adding more things to improve the software. So sometimes the older MacBooks that used to be able to run Scratch Live won't exactly work right with Serato DJ Pro. You might make it work, but it's a lot riskier. So basically, all you have to do is check out the specs and just compare them. Go to Serato's site and then check out the specs on your MacBook. Now, if you are buying a used MacBook Air on Craigslist and you're not sure, make sure to ask for all the specs. In fact, have them click about this Mac, go to overview, and have them take a picture of it so you know exactly what you're working with. Because all you have to do is compare the two and you'll see if it works on paper. Now, what about other DJ software? And one that's gaining a lot of popularity right now is Pioneer's REKORDBOX DJ. So let's look at the minimum system requirements as stated on their website. For Mac users, it supports macOS High Sierra 10.13. So as of right now, no Mojave. And it can go as far back as Sierra 10.12 and Mac OS X El Capitan 10.11. For the processor requirements, this is interesting with REKORDBOX. It doesn't even state a speed. It just says you have to use an Intel processor Core i3, i5, or i7. Doesn't even say a speed. Screen resolution, the minimum should be 1280 by 768. All Macs exceed that. Minimum memory, 4 gigs of RAM, similar to Serato. USB 2.0, of course. LAN port, optional, and that'll be a topic for another video. Minimum free hard drive space, 2 gigabytes. And one of the things I really like about what they list on their website, they have this really comprehensive footnote. Even though your system meets these minimum requirements, there's no guarantee that it's gonna work flawlessly. It's basically saying the more powerful your system, the more stable the software is going to be. So my recommended system requirements, not much different from Serato. Basically macOS High Sierra 10.13, Sierra 10.12, and El Capitan 10.11. I say drop the i3, use an i5 or an i7. Memory, 8 gigabytes. Free hard drive space, 2 gigabytes of course. Hard drive type, solid state or a hybrid drive. Now get this, even though you're using REKORDBOX, I highly recommend following Serato's Mac optimization guide for Mac OS or OS X. I did not see a guide on Pioneer's website about it. I've seen one on Digital DJ Tips, and I still say the best one that I found was the one on Serato because they addressed the whole thing with AppNap. Now, I don't think AppNap applies to REKORDBOX. I didn't see it when I checked it out. So according to my requirements, every MacBook Air from mid-2011 onward, on paper, should be able to run REKORDBOX DJ. As you can see when you compare the specs between my recommended system requirements and my MacBook Air, it exceeds it. And I've actually used it with REKORDBOX and I haven't had an issue. Now, I haven't tried it with all the features of REKORDBOX, including the DMX controller or video. The tutorial video I did with the Peter Piper routine on the DDJ 1000 was done on my MacBook Air. So let's take a look at the third of the big three DJ software, Traktor Pro 2 from Native Instruments. According to their website, the minimum system requirements are as follows. No Mojave yet, High Sierra 10.13, Sierra 10.12, El Capitan 10.11, and even as far back as Yosemite 10.10. So for the processor requirements, it says an Intel processor, Core i5 or later, so meaning an i5 or an i7. Screen resolution, 1024 by 768. Not a problem for any Mac. Minimum memory, 4 gigs of RAM. USB 2.0. Free hard drive space required, 1 gigabyte. One of the unique things I saw on Traktor's requirements that I didn't see on Serato or REKORDBOX is graphics card must support at least OpenGL 2.1. I don't know what that means, but the first MacBook Air from 2009 supports OpenGL 3.3. I'm not saying to use a 2009 MacBook. All the other specs don't add up. But what I'm saying is all MacBook Airs since 2009 fit this requirement. I'm not a big Traktor user. I do have it. I mess with it from time to time for decks and whatnot. I have not tried the stem function where you can do 4-track stems yet. But with the fact that it can run Serato DJ Pro, which is a heavy program, same with REKORDBOX, Traktor I suspect to be fine. Now, that's basically how you do it. You can check the minimum requirements and compare it to your computer specs or the one that you're looking at and see if it meets or exceeds it. At the bottom in the description, I included all my recommended requirements. You can compare them as well. And it's not always a guarantee, but the more you have, whether it's RAM, processor speed, it's always good to meet or exceed the requirements so that you have a little bit of headroom when it comes to running your DJ software. And one of the other things to consider is the type of hardware you're using is actually going to dictate how heavy on your system resource it's actually going to use. So what I'm talking about is controllers are generally lighter on the system resource than using DVS, because controllers, the input is direct. It's like using a keyboard as far as the computer is concerned. When you're using DVS, you're basically taking a time code. Not only is your computer playing back a song, it has to interpret the time code. However that time code is interpreted, which takes system resource, that's going to manipulate how your music is played back. So one of the things to just keep in mind, that minimum requirements are great, but make sure to exceed them so you can leave some room. I've used controllers and HID mode, which falls under controller, and DVS with 2 decks with no problem with my MacBook Air. So basically, when you're using DVS versus a controller, because of the heavier resource DVS takes, you can make up for it by dialing the latency to be a little slower in response. Now, for me, anything over 5, which jumps to 10 on Serato, is unusable because I can't scratch at 10 milliseconds. Some people can, I cannot. And if my computer cannot safely run on 5 milliseconds, then for me, I need to get a more powerful computer. So if you're using DVS, just keep in mind that either you have to have more latency or you have to have a more powerful computer. One of the interesting things I discovered when I was doing research for this was that I found out that Virtual DJ is actually the most expensive DJ software. That's if you don't count Ableton. But when I'm talking about DJ software, I'm talking about ones with cue points where you can pitch bend, where you can manually beat match. That's not what Ableton does. So, but Virtual DJ is $299. If you just took Serato DJ by itself, $129 if you're just using the controller. If you want to use DVS, you add another $100. But overall, Virtual DJ is surprisingly an expensive platform. And it's not that, and I'm not saying that to diss on it. It's like a lot of people do diss on it. And however, for them to maintain that price, that means somebody's buying it. And it doesn't, and the price doesn't really represent the quality. But from what I heard from people who actually tried it out and not just be keyboard warriors about their hate for Virtual DJ, the latest versions are actually on par with Traktor and Serato and REKORDBOX. So something to take a look at. The thing about Virtual DJ is that it reminds me of the Boss Metal Zone, which is a distortion pedal, and a lot of metal guitarists clown on it, but it's actually one of Boss's best-selling pedals. So meaning people are buying it. And one of the things about it is it's attributed to being misused. And a lot of people talk about Virtual DJ because so many people use the automated features and a lot of DJs look down on that. But it totally negates the capability that you can use with Virtual DJ, because just like the Boss Metal Zone, in the right hands, so many awesome things can be done with it. And one of the things about Virtual DJ is on its system requirements, it actually supports Mac OS X version 10.5. I have no idea what 10.5 is. Let's look that up. That's Mac Leopard. That's before Snow Leopard. That was before I even started using the Mac. Initial release date, October 26, 2007. And for the processor, it's it just says Intel processor. And for the recommended, it says use Snow Leopard 10.6 or later. If you use Virtual DJ, check it out. I've never used Virtual DJ, so I can't really speak for it. So Virtual DJ, if you're listening, if you could give me a full demo license, I would love to do a demonstration. And also, I discovered that there was another company that still exists, PC DJ. I have no idea who actually uses it still. I remember when I worked at DJ Supply and they did a whole clinic on PC DJ, and they had these big computers, systems from back in 2005 or 2006. It was the early introduction of digital DJing, and it was all these mobile DJs that came in, and that was the first time and last time I heard about PC DJ. It's like 12 to 13 years later, and I did not know that they are still a company. No diss to them. I just have no idea who's actually using it. So I hope I didn't make it too confusing for you guys. In a nutshell, the answer is yes, you can use a MacBook Air. Which MacBook Air? It depends. And I basically showed you guys how to figure it out on your own. If you like this video, be sure to hit that like button. And if I confused you, you have any questions, or you don't like this video, be sure to leave it in the comments. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to me, and be sure to click that bell icon so you guys get notified the next time I upload a video. And for those of you from Portland, I hope to see you guys this weekend at Hot Import Nights. I'm going to be hosting the spin-off DJ battle. It's going to be the last battle of the year, and it is sponsored by Pioneer DJ. I really appreciate you guys watching. Take care.